Level. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Aisha, I love that open.
Well, thank you.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure now on me to deliver as a courage expert.
And you will.
Oh, of course. Yeah, let's get into it.
Absolutely. So, how did you become an expert on courage? Do you
That's,
have a
that's
backstory you can share with us?
I mean, what a fair question. What a
How
fair
many
question.
courage experts do we know?
All right, so like to be very clear, um, the universe is a funny thing. I am an observationalist. Right? That's what I do for a living. Um, and I'm a storyteller. So about 5 years ago, I was running a creative agency in Southern California. We were about 90 people. And it was the first time in my career where I wasn't needed in the day to day. I had hired well. And this was tricky because as a creative, I like to create. And now I'm moving into the land of management. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, happy place. Is this really what I wanted as we're growing? And I needed something to do. I think that's really what happened, just to like keep me happy.
So,
And
management wasn't making you happy.
I enjoy problem solving, but I also enjoy creating. And so I just there was a it was this it wasn't clear, but I knew that there was more for me to do. And I remember, when you're based in San Diego, which is my home now after a decade in New York City, I remember thinking, wow, we're now officially a big company for little San Diego, but we're like a little company in the grand scheme against New York and San Francisco and LA. When you think of like creativity, that you're not thinking fish taco land, you're thinking the bigger
New York
market.
City.
Exactly. And but there was like a little aha moment that I had, which was every single time our team would work on the courageous idea, they'd stay later, they were happier, and when our clients bought those ideas, the return was through the roof. And every single time we worked on the safe idea, my office was empty at 4:59. I had a closed door meeting with somebody, and the return was meager at best. And so I remember going to my partners at the time and being like, I think I've landed on our positioning. Courageous ideas are the only ones that matter. I want to go write a book about this. I think this is something that we could use as a devious marketing tool to position the business. And they're like, yes, go do it, go on the adventure, go on the journey. And the very first interview I had, and at this point, by the way, I have my own fears, right? I'm like, one, I'm not qualified to write a book. How do you do that? And then second, I'm driving. My first interview is with a founding astronaut at Virgin Galactic, and she's like, "Come up and have lunch with me." And she says, when I get there, before our trays even hit the table, she says, "So, what makes you qualified to write a book about courage?" Touche astronaut. I'm like, well, I have been writing pithy one-liners on Twitter for a living. That's pretty courageous. And she's like, no, 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 no. She's like, listen, your brain is putting the emphasis where I'm not. Part of your journey is to figure out why you're writing this book. And then she proceeded to tell me that her definition of success is when there's no daylight between the personal you and the professional you. And that was the line that got me as someone that had been in the service business for 20 years. I remember driving back to San Diego with like my knuckles in the 10 and 2 position in silence, thinking about, okay, this is not this book is not what I thought it was going to be. Um, now looking back on it, I got to take 3 years and interview the brave, the bullish, and the brainiac, and take what I learned from them and realize like we can learn how to be courageous. We just don't know how to do it. We want to be courageous. We confuse it with an act of impulse. We confuse it with a careless act. We confuse it with a resilient act. They're all very different than an act of courage. But it took me going on that journey and sitting with all these like sage people. So I joke, I wrote the book thinking I was going to use it to position myself in my last life. It really gave me the courage to fire myself and to start Courageous, which is now, gosh, 2019 is when we started. Launched the book in 19, and then we got very good press on the book. And next thing you know, I'm sharing what I learned from all these amazing people at Google and Snap. Google took me with them to some of their clients, and the rest has been history. And now it's just been so. Again, I'm not a Navy SEAL. I've never been to space. I can't even figure out what tattoo I'd want. Uh, but when it comes to deconstructing courage and helping people spot a moment uh, when they should unlock it, and as you said, even in the open, often we know what we need to do, but knowing what to do and doing it are two very different things.
So since 2019 and your own self-discovery of what courage means, what definition have you arrived at? What is courage to you? And how is that different from what another person can see, the average person sees courage as?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked the question. And my sense is if there's one thing you take away from our conversation, and I say you, I mean the listener, I hope you do too, by the way, is my rabbit hole moment was if you actually look at the dictionary definition of courage, it's the ability to do something that frightens you. And look, I'd say of the 340 million people that live here in the country, 330, 325 have no interest in doing things that scare them, let alone doing those things at work. Right? Uh,
Absolutely.
so 95% of us are freeze or flight. Only 5% of us are fight. So when I looked at that definition, I was like, well, where's the utility in that? How does that help me spot a courageous moment? And so, I go on my journey, and this is the one thing I hope everybody takes away. My definition of courage is knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage. And it needs to be all three of these levers. So, how often have you known the right thing and felt it, and then we don't do anything about it? And for those of you in the data business, data is a means to knowledge. It's not knowledge itself, right? So, to me, knowledge plus faith without action is paralysis. Faith and action without knowledge is a reckless move. And knowledge and action without faith. And when we talk about faith, we mean like inner belief. We don't mean it in the religious sense. If you
Inner
know
belief in yourself or inner belief in the unknown?
a little bit of both. I mean, again, as your knowledge grows, your faith is probably going to grow, even if it's taking on something new, right?
Correct, of course.
So, but a lot of people stay at companies a long time. You've been in a business for 15 years, you've got the knowledge, you're going through the motions and you're taking action, but like you're numb on the inside. There's no faith. So, knowledge and action with no faith to me is safe, it's status quo. And when you're not there to defend an idea in this media obese world we're living in, that's just not going to do the job. So, to me, it's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage. And in the book, I go into greater detail. Okay, well, which knowledge should you follow? How do you actually build internal faith? And where should I take action? Where shouldn't I take action? But that is the definition that I like to use. Another way to say it is, what do I think about this? How does it make me feel? What am I going to do about it? And for the listener, let's say you are stuck on something. You are spinning on something. I would break a piece of paper into three. And in the left-hand column, I put, what do I think about this? Which is the knowledge side. In the middle, I put, what do I feel about this? Which is the faith side. And on the right, I put, okay, what am I going to do about this? Which is the action side. Think, feel, do. And hopefully, as you start to write it out, it can give you an action plan to taking your first step or next step or whatever it is you're trying to do.
Now, will that help us navigate understanding our own level of courage in relation to how much risk we want to take? Because as you mentioned, some people move and some people jump off the cliff. So
Yeah.
what's that fine line? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, such a good question. First of all, I think it's important to say that I equate courage, the courage business, to to skiing, right? There's some people that are like ready for the bunny slope and like that's awesome, and there's others that want to be thrown out of a helicopter, right?
Correct.
Right. And as long as you're willing to come to the mountain, then I am happy to help. If you're not interested in going to the mountain, I'm probably the wrong guy for you. And even we joke, but when your company is called Courageous, you're telling the world who you're not for as much as who you are for. So, like, I love being in the fear fighting business. That's really what we are. We're fear fighters, and we're compensated to smoke out what the fear is first, and then shrink that fear down. And so, for anyone that's listening, it starts there. There's a famous proverb that fear and courage are brothers. Right? Fear and courage are kin, and then eh, most of us suppress that fear versus address it.
Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of fear of the unknown. There's so much change going on right now. We've got economic and market uncertainty, um, technology uncertainty. I mean, I can go on, political uncertainty, and this makes a lot of people freeze. Um, how do you navigate that?
To me, it's like, how do you make the fear unemotional? I mean, first, it's there, it's real, right? But again, most of us are suppressing that fear versus like bringing it out and addressing it and just calling it what it is. Then you're not going to be able to solve all 11 problems at the same time. So it's about prioritizing, right? I would even call it podiumizing. So, like, podiumize your three biggest fears.
What does that mean?
All right, imagine we're in the Olympics here. Well, there's a podium.
Okay.
What's your gold medal fear? What's the biggest fear you need to shrink? What's your silver medal fear? What's your second biggest fear you need to tackle? And what's your bronze? Now, yeah, it would be nice to say in every scenario that you start with the biggest fear, but realistically, you might not have time for that. So maybe it's the bronze fear that you address first. And as you build up that courage muscle, it gives you the courage to go, okay, now let's go for gold or let's go for silver. But what a lot of us do is we get so overwhelmed by the way the world is, all of the fears stay tangled together and we make no progress on shrinking any of the fears down. The number one value of our company, Courageous, is sacrifice. So we always say the most important thing is the most important thing. I can't tell you what the most important thing is for you,
Right,
right? I can only do
everybody
it
has
for
to figure it out.
correct. And so we're living in a very, very cloudy time.
Correct.
I would call it a clarity epidemic. And when we're not clear, it causes that paralysis. It causes us to not address these fears. And if you can't bring a fear out, you certainly can't shrink it down. And so a lot of our work first is like holding the hand of our client and being their friend. And that's all they want because it's very lonely for leaders. And being somewhere where they can turn and being like, okay, this is really what's keeping me up at night. And I don't know what to do. And my team is asking me to figure it out. Actually, your team isn't asking you to figure it out. That's why you hired them. They're here to help you. They probably actually know that that's a fear of yours. You just haven't shared that with the rest of the team. And so, on the leadership side of our business, it is being an ally, it is being the friend of the leader, it is getting the fears out on the table. It's doing it in a way where they see that they are a mirror and that their behavior is going to be reflected by their actions with everybody else on the team. So that's one massive component of what we do at Courageous. The second is we're special forces that helps you figure out your special. Because once you can figure out your special, you can bring to life your special. A lot of times that's storytelling. What is your courageous idea? What is that big idea that can galvanize the whole organization? And then there's a third part of the business, which is like, as you stated, like my Courageous podcast. I have a weekly newsletter called Your Weekly Dose of Courage for people that need a nudge. I would call that like the entertainment side of our business. But for me, it's fun to like dream and play in all of these different spaces and try to help our clients see that like courage can set them free. It's in some ways we're in the liberation business.
I like that. Liberate yourself to be authentic with your team.
Correct.
Liberate yourself to tell your story.
Well, again, think about a time in your career where you let the record just loop over and over again in your mind, and you just couldn't get it out, and you did nothing because of it. So if I can liberate you from that moment, right? Courage does set you free, and it's just learning how to do it in a way that doesn't kill your company. That's not a careless act, but actually a courageous one.
So it's you're setting your own truth free.
To me, it's so funny you said that. I always say I get paid to tell the truth. That's a pretty cool place to be. I'll even say, I'm like, so look, I can't not say this. My company's called Courageous, but the problem starts at the top. It's like if we can't have honest conversations with ourselves, we're certainly not going to have honest conversations with the rest of our team.
Absolutely. Now, so many businesses fail. 80% of startups, 50% of small businesses by the second year. How much of that depends on the leader?
I mean, 100%, 100%. It's the leader, and it's who the leader surrounds themselves with. Right? We're not here to create any aneurysms for any leader that's listening. Right? It's like it's just helping the leader get clear as to why they're making the decisions that they're making. And look, as you pass go, right, with progress in your business, new problems arise, bigger problems arise, and it matters who you hire. Well, how are you hiring those people? Do they share your values? Have you declared your purpose? I always say it's not enough to know your why. There has to be a rally cry in that why. And when you have that rally cry in your why, your people actually want to work for you. They want to fight for you. They're willing to stick around for the mission. And so I think the good news is the next generation workforce, they get this, they know this. They're not going to spend time working for companies that aren't purpose driven. But I think being courageous is acknowledging like where are we like going to put our purpose? What are we going to stand for? And if you don't know what you stand for, you never know when to take a stand.
How about relevancy? How does that play in terms of being courageous in business?
Well, I just think
You smiled.
yeah, I smiled because I think, you know, I feel like there are journey words in business and there are destination words in business. Does that make sense?
Explain.
Okay.
To me, it
So,
makes sense, but to our listeners, it may not. So
so to me, courage is a journey word. Courage is needed in the messy middle where decisions happen along the way. And usually what happens is when we're not courageous, we're probably going to land in the sea of sameness. But when we're courageous in the messy middle, the destination is landing in a place that's ultimately meaningful. Relevance is another destination word. Excellence, in my opinion, is another destination word. So the stuff that's needed in the middle, where decisions happen, like where courage is actually needed, where to say yes, where to say no, right? Holding firm on a specific point of view because we said this is what was important to us. I think when you follow that path, you actually have a shot to be relevant. And that's what's at stake. It's like not lying to yourself. Are we really a relevant company? Are we on our way? And by the way, a lot of companies who were relevant at one point, right? They squeeze the sponge on their revenue. They stop innovating or they rested on their laurels. And you wonder why companies like Tower Records, Blockbuster, we're not talking about them in a positive way. Well, when they were at their largest, they would laugh and scoff at this conversation. And that hubris is part of the problem. Once relevant companies that are now in the business morgue. So to me, it's like the leader. It's constantly auditing, not just one handed today, but one handed tomorrow, and really thinking about the investments and the processes that are in place to help keep you relevant for a long time.
absolutely. And you also mentioned the word sameness. I mean, if you can't differentiate your company from all the other companies out there, you lose. You risk being obsolete.
It's funny. I always say that same is the enemy of change. So when you think about your employees, and they're like, "Oh man, new leader came in. Things will never be the same." Uh, that's kind of what you want. I find it fascinating that the word "same" and "safe" it's just one little letter change, right, between the M and the F. And I always say your future is safe with change because if you're not changing, you're dying.
Correct. Now, I have two more questions to ask you. In your book, there's a section in there about the traits of a courageous business brand. Can you talk about two or three of them instead of all of them? We don't have time for all of them. There's two or three most important ones to you.
Well, look, I think I'll sum up the section by saying, I think in the book I call them courage brands. And the simplest way to say this is imagine you put your business on pause for a moment and you had to audit where your business was. On the courage spectrum, where would you have it land? Is it a coward brand? Is it a stasis brand? Is it an iterative brand? Is it an aspirational brand? Or is it a courage brand? Now, for those of you who are like, well, we don't have a brand. Okay, look, if you're a business, you are a brand.
Right.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so you would call it are you a coward business? Fine. Are you a coward business? Are you a stasis business? An iterative business? An aspirational business or a courageous business? And I would start there. And usually what happens is most companies will go, well, we used to be this and now we're that. And usually when we say we used to be this, we were more on the courage brand side and we've slipped down to a stasis brand or an iterative brand or somewhere down the line. Look, courage brands are constantly winning. Like they are staying ahead of the game. They're breaking through this clarity epidemic that we've got, right? And they know what they stand for, and they're willing to put the flag down. When companies like Method Soap, a commodity business, comes up with a line, "The people against dirty," which is still their line to this day. Soap company, commodity business, right? They thought it was odd that you had to wear rubber gloves to clean your house. How clean are these ingredients if you actually have to put something between your hands and the ingredients themselves? So they made a cleaner product and then they came out with the people against dirty. And now they've got 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds, 26-year-olds flying in droves to San Francisco to work for this company. And they found a way to make soap cool. All through that little lens of the people against dirty. Are you for dirty or against dirty? So when I talk about that rally cry in your why, there's a clear enemy that they're trying to take down. So for any listener, start with the enemy. Who is the villain of your business? What villain are you trying to take down? Is it greed? Is it dirty? Is it, you know, uh, cloudiness? I'm not here to tell you what it is, but if you could start with the enemy, then you can figure out what the hero is and how you're the hero of this story. And that's how you galvanize your people.
Now, after having talked to and worked with so many leaders and business owners and just people in general, you've transformed a lot of lives with the work you do. What is the best compliment you've ever received?
Oh, this is simple. You ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you. That's it. It's just thank you. Yeah, and to me, there's a lot of joy in hearing that. I mean, because sometimes we're coming up with what's the language, right? What's the filter that all business decisions are being made through? And if you can come up with that little succinct, simple, the people against dirty for a company, they know exactly how to behave in every situation. And so, in some ways, it's like peace of mind for the leader. They know they need to do something, but it's cloudy, and there's fits and starts in all different directions. That quest for relevance probably starts first by like landing on something unique that's honest about the brand or the business or the team. I have to be careful on this because I don't want to give too much away. A few weeks ago, I was with one of the teams with Four Seasons Hotel, and we spent our time basically talking about like what makes them different is the specialness It was the special factor and the idea of like staying special and making people feel special when you stay there. And you do, because they do all the little things. And so for them, they now know like they're looking for these moments to continue to make people feel special. And people from all over the world, come and stay at a Four Seasons hotel. It's a luxury product. So how
Sure.
do you make the most luxurious person still feel special? That's become their little mantra for the way they go about looking for victories on the inside. And it was just like, it was the thank you back for coming in and helping them get clear on that direction. So whatever that is, that's what our business is and that's what we do.
Fantastic. Now, do you have any last bits of advice for our listeners before we go?
I mean, look, if you've made it this far into this conversation, then there's probably something that you need to do, right? And no one's going to do it unless you do it. I'm like, that's the good news and the bad news. Um, I get to go around the country and do a lot of keynote work. And I always start with, are you stuck? Are you stale? Are you scared? Or are you spinning? And that's okay. Like it's probably one of them. Being scared is being human,
Absolutely.
right? But going back to that comment about the liberation business, I do believe courage sets you free. What I have found is, although it doesn't feel like it in the moment, making the courageous move, not only does it create confidence inside the organization and you're building that courage muscle, but it will make you happier in the long run. You just got to get through the fear and go. And again, like I said, no one's going to do it if not you. So why not start now and why not you? And good luck. Courage sets you free. Go get them.
Fantastic. Ryan, thank you so much for your motivational, inspirational talk with us this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you.
Likewise.